Tonight we will continue our study of the Bhakti Shastri course, and tonight we will continue with the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 10. So if you have any questions or comments as we go, please ask. Can someone just let me know that they're hearing this okay?
Oh, good, Casey.
Okay, thank you. So chapter 10. Chapter 10. So chapter 10 is called the Techniques of Hearing and Remembering. So it's a very important chapter because there are 64 angas of bhakti. And these 64 come from the 9 angas, which are spoken of by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. So these are the 9 types of devotional service. Now, the first 3 are considered to be primary and principal because the goal of Krishna consciousness is to always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. That's the goal. So that's the 3rd item of bhakti, which is smarana. So what is the most effective way to attain smaranam? It's through shravanam and kirtanam, hearing and chanting about Krishna. So the more you hear and chant about Krishna, the easier it is to remember Krishna. So shravanam is first. Spiritual life begins with shravanam, with hearing. Now these 2, shravanam and kirtanam, which are the first 2 items mentioned, and arguably the most important, they are interdependent. In other words, the process given in Srimad Bhagavatam, the abhideya means the process of how to become Krishna conscious. The process given in the Bhagavatam is Harinam Anukirtanam. Harinam Anukirtanam means chanting the holy names of Krishna. Nama Sankirtan. That is the process for becoming God realized, becoming Krishna conscious, right? Is to chant the holy name of Krishna. Now, our chanting is dependent upon our hearing. In other words, if you hear attentively, Srila Prabhupada says, with rapt attention, right? If you're absorbed in hearing about Krishna, Prabhupada gave us the Krishna book, which is a summary study of Canto 10, which is the summum bonum of the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada gave us that book in 1970, very early in the movement. And Prabhupada said, if you hear Krishna book before you go to sleep, you will dream about Krishna. So hearing is the essence of spiritual life, and it nourishes our chanting. In other words, your chanting becomes nourished or becomes potent the more you hear about Krishna. So if you're hearing about Krishna regularly and attentively and with rapt attention and in a deep and meditative way, then your chanting will become effective. If you chant, which is what we're all instructed to do in the Hare Krishna movement, Kirtan, Nam Sankirtan is considered to be the principal anga of bhakti, Harinamano Kirtanam. That's the process the Bhagavatam gives us to become perfect. If you're chanting but you're not hearing sufficiently, your chanting will not be so effective unless you're very advanced. And then you can just chant. But you have to be extraordinary to practice like that. So we need to chant attentively, but we need to hear to nourish our chanting. One devotee was actually sharing with us last week. He said, it's a supportive point. Prabhupada said, health first, then Krishna consciousness. You have to be healthy. Because if you're not healthy, this devotee was sharing with us last week, very hard to chant attentively. Right? It's hard to chant attentively. Focus on the holy name when you're not feeling well. We all know that. When you're not feeling well, it's very difficult to chant. When you have jet lag or when you're feeling sick or something, it's not easy to chant. So the chanting is the principal method of attaining Krishna consciousness, but it must be supported by hearing. That nourishes the chanting. Then the chanting comes to life. As Prabhupada says, in the beginning, just hear the holy name. And devotees always quote that. They always quote Prabhupada said, just hear, but that's not the only thing Prabhupada said in regards to chanting. Prabhupada also said, if you chant scientifically, or if you follow the process of chanting, Srila Prabhupada said that in due course of time, the pastimes of Krishna will enter your consciousness automatically, or hoituki. Right? If you're chanting attentively with devotion, Krishna's pastimes will come while chanting. Right? So Prabhupada said that's the process, which is the third item of bhakti, which is smaranam, or remembrance. So when we hear nicely, we chant nicely, and then we can remember Krishna. That's the process. That's why the first three items are considered the most important items of bhakti. And similarly, our hearing about Krishna becomes nourished by our chanting. If you don't chant nicely, when you do read the Krishna book, you won't get many realizations. You can read or hear, as Prabhupada explains in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, reading is passive hearing. It's hearing, it's Shravana. But you won't get so many realizations. So hearing and chanting are interdependent. Right? You can't be successful in one without the other, generally. Unless you're very advanced, say like Haridas Thakur. And then your chanting is perfect. But so this will lead to remembrance. So this chapter is very important because three of the principal, or actually four angas of bhakti will be discussed. There's only 4 angas in this chapter because they're so important. There's 4. So 2 of them are hearing and remembering, which are the some of the principal angas of bhakti, the most important. So this chapter 10 is a very obviously very important chapter, as are all the chapters, but this is very important. This chapter describes 4 devotional principles: hearing, expecting the Lord's mercy, remembering, and meditating. Srila Rupa Goswami extensively discusses hearing and meditating. Right? So in this particular chapter, the emphasis is on hearing and meditating. So these will be elaborated upon. So the first item described is Shravanam, is hearing. There are basically 3 ways to hear. Nama, Shravanam, to hear the name of Krishna. Number 2, Charita Shravana, to hear about the pastimes. And number 3, Gunadi Shravana, to hear about the qualities of Krishna. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. To hear about these different features of Krishna. This is explained in the Harinam Chintamani by Haridas Thakur. Krishna is the supreme object of worship and meditation. If you analyze your consciousness, we're always meditating on something. Right? We're always meditating on something. Right? You're meditating on someone you know, or an object, or something. You're always meditating on something. So everything you meditate upon has 4 qualities. It has a name, it has a form, it has qualities, and it has a purpose or pastimes. So that's an object, right? An object must have those 4 to be an object. And Krishna is the supreme object. He has a name, form, qualities, and pastimes. And then we can add to that, we can say a dham. Dham means a place of residence, right? So we meditate on the name, and when you become a little advanced in Krishna consciousness, while chanting the name of Krishna, the form of Krishna should come into your consciousness. That's a symptom of advancement. Some devotees, it's actually recommended that we chant in front of pictures or deities of Krishna. Go on, Jagannath or Nrsingadev or Giriraj or Shalagram, whatever it is. By chanting the name of Krishna in front of the form of Krishna, it amalgamates the two. Because that's what we're trying to develop, remembrance of Krishna. So when we say the word Krishna, we should automatically think of the person. Like, someone if you say their name, you think of their form in your mind. Automatically, you see them in your mind. Just by saying their name. So the name, as soon as we chant it, we should see Krishna's form. It's also recommended by acharyas that you can chant in front of the written form of the Maha Mantra. That's also very effective. Like we have this big, here in our temple, we have this big poster, or how do you call it? Yeah. Like that. We have the Maha Mantra. So actually the acharyas recommend, it is recommended you can also chant in front of that and meditate on the names, deeply while you're meditating. And if you study Bhajana Rahasya, which is the sequel to Harinam Chintamani, Bhakti-yoga Thakur breaks down the 8 couplets of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He breaks them all down. And they correlate to the 8 time frames of Krishna's pastimes, the Ashtakaliya Leela. So you can, Hare Krishna, the first one, you can meditate on Krishna's waking up in the morning. Second one, it's an advanced process, but it's a process. It's actually mentioned. Gopal Guru Goswami explains it. It's explained. Jnana Chandra Goswami explains it. There are literatures explaining these things, how to do it. It's an advanced form of meditation. But one day we have to become advanced devotees. We can't be neophyte devotees forever. It's boring. Otherwise, what do we do? We just chant inattentively for our whole life. Sooner or later, you have to really get deep consciousness. So, these things they're all there waiting for us for when we're ready. That's why, for, last 20 plus years, I've been going to these holy name retreats in India with Gurujan Prabhu and Satchidananda Swami. And the reason is because it deepens the practice of chanting the holy name of Krishna. Because it has to become deeper over time. You can't remain a neophyte forever in devotional service. It's not very satisfying. So when we chant the holy name, the form should come, nama rupa. From the form, the quality should come. You see Krishna and you think, oh, Krishna. He has these 64 qualities, which are mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion in the next section, which in Kartik we sometimes read the 64 qualities. You remember any of the 64?
Sweetness.
Sweetness, yeah, sweetness.
Radharani's qualities. Your eyes are always moving.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so we go in Kartik, we actually read these qualities, each Kartik. Radharani's qualities, Krishna's qualities, for that reason. Because then when you're chanting, you can remember their qualities. How are you going to remember them if you don't even know what their qualities are? Radharani has 25 qualities. Number 25 is she can control Krishna. It's a beautiful quality, because last night in Melbourne, I was teaching chapter 8 of the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is arguably one of the most important chapters in the entire book, Ramananda Samvada, the teachings, the discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya. And last night we went over the verses, some of them, describing the glories of Srimati Radharani. It's a very deep meditation. You know, I was meditating on these things, and this is one of the qualities. She controls Krishna, right? And it's a beautiful description, which is, maybe we'll go over it one time, maybe in Kartik. We can start with that. Beautiful description. So if you don't read these things, if you don't meditate on, how will you meditate on these things while chanting? Which is what we're meant to head towards. That should be the goal of our chanting. When we chant, then the form of Krishna comes, then his qualities, and then Lila. Nama Rupa Guna Lila. Lila means pastimes. Now you remember his Lila, his pastimes that he performed. So many beautiful pastimes. And then you remember Vrindavan, his Dham. That's why we go to Vrindavan. So when we go there, we see the places where Krishna performed the pastimes. And when we sit here in Australia, we chant, we can remember in our mind, we can be in those places, remembering where Krishna performed his pastimes. Right? And this place where I'm sitting right now is called New Nandagram, our farm. And we've identified the different holy places around Nandagram. So sometimes when we're chanting, we can remember this is where Krishna performed these different pastimes. It can become a very deep meditation. That's why Prabhupada did first farm in ISKCON, he called it New Vrindavan for that reason. And he said we should have the 7 temples of Vrindavan in that farm, which unfortunately the devotees haven't been able to fulfill that order. But then Radhanath Swami is doing it in the eco-village. He's building the temples. I don't know if he's built them all yet, but they're building the temples. So this is the process. The process is Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. So as it says here, hearing means these 3, Nama Shravana, Charita Shravana, and Gunadi Shravana. So hearing about his name, his qualities, and his pastimes. The first reference in the Garuda Purana deals with hearing the Lord's name. The second reference, 4th canto, deals with hearing the Lord's pastimes, and the last reference in the 12th canto deals with hearing the glorification and his glorification and transcendental qualities. So this is on page 89 and 90 of Nectar of Devotion. So we'll read some of these. Prabhupada says, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness and devotional service, the beginning of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is hearing, in Sanskrit called Shravanam. All people should be given the chance to come and join devotional parties so that they may hear. Prabhupada actually said this. He said, this is the purpose of the temples. They're meant to be educational centers. You know, not that you just come and see the deity. Because you can see the deity, but if you don't hear about the deity, you won't advance properly in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada said the temples are meant to be educational centers. This hearing is very important for propagating for progressing in Krishna consciousness. When one links his ears to give oral reception to the transcendental vibrations, he can quickly become purified and cleansed in the heart. Lord Chaitanya has affirmed that this hearing is very important. It cleanses the heart of the contaminated soul so that he becomes quickly qualified to enter into devotional service and understand Krishna consciousness. So this is the first type of hearing. In this paragraph, Prabhupada quotes from the Garuda, or Rupa Goswami, quotes from the Garuda Purana. And this is speaking about hearing the name, hearing the glories of the name of Krishna. Nama Shravana. The Garuda Purana, in the Garuda Purana, the stress on hearing is expressed very nicely. It is said there, the state of conditioned life in the material world is just like that of a man lying unconscious, having been bitten by a snake. This is because both such unconscious states can be ended by the sound of a mantra. So it's a very nice analogy, which is given there. If you are bitten by a snake, you become poisoned, and quite often you become unconscious. So if someone is unconscious, how do we wake them up? With sound. Or if someone's sleeping, we make sound. Hey, Haribol, time to wake up. Right? So sound is what awakens the consciousness. Similarly, if someone is bitten by a snake and they're unconscious due to the poison, the snake charmer can chant mantra to extract the poison from the wound, and then you will gain your consciousness again. So this is same thing. By Shravanam, your unconsciousness is destroyed. You're lifted out of your unconscious state, your forgetful state of forgetting Krishna. This can be overcome by hearing. So this is the first type of hearing which is given. The chanting of the name. Prabhupada says, there are expert chanters of these mantras who can perform this feat. Similarly, one can be brought back into Krishna consciousness from the deadly unconscious state of material life by hearing of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that is the power of the mantra. It can wake you up. It can destroy your ignorance and bring you back to Krishna consciousness. So the second type, quoting from the fourth canto, the second type of hearing is called Charita Shravana, which means hearing about the pastimes of Krishna. In the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 29th chapter, verse 40, the importance of hearing of the pastimes of the Lord is stated by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, one should stay at a place where the great acharyas, holy teachers, speak about the transcendental activities of the Lord. And one should give oral reception to the nectarian river flowing from the moonlike faces of such great personalities. If someone eagerly continues to hear such transcendental sounds, then certainly he will become freed from all material hunger, thirst, fear, and lamentation, as well as all illusions of material existence. So we're meant to hear about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna as much as possible. Hear about the pastimes. Today I was listening to His Holiness Radhanath Swami speak about the glories of Jagannath Puri Dham, or Lord Jagannath. So we need to do this on a regular basis. The other night I was driving to Melbourne and I was listening to some of Prabhupada's daughters speaking about their pastimes with Prabhupada. Right? So we need to hear. Prabhupada explains, hearing about a pure devotee and hearing about Krishna are equal in potency. So you can hear about the pure devotee or you can hear about Krishna. They have the same level of purification on the consciousness. So we need to hear on a regular basis. And especially, where many of us live, many of you who are listening now, you're living in households, you don't see devotees on a daily basis. We're also living in a very quiet location. There's not a lot of association. So we're very dependent upon the process of hearing. We have to hear regularly the instructions and the pastimes of Krishna through the mouths of devotees. And we're so fortunate now in Kali Yuga, you can just get on your phone and you can listen to anyone from anywhere in the world, right? Instantaneously, right? It's such a powerful blessing. That's the benefit of modern technology. Now time and space are shrunk. We can sit here and listen to someone speaking in America or England or Europe or something like that. It's a very powerful opportunity that we have now because of modern technology. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu also recommended this process of hearing as a means of self-realization in the present age of Kali. In this age, it is very difficult to follow thoroughly the regulative principles and studies of the Vedas, which were formerly recommended. However, if one gives oral reception to the sound vibrated by great devotees and acharyas, that alone will give him relief from all material contamination. Therefore, it is the recommendation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that one should simply hear from authorities who are actually devotees of the Lord. Hearing from professional men will not help. If we hear from those who are actually self-realized, then the nectarian rivers, like those which are flowing on the moon planet, will flow into our ears. This is the metaphor used in the above verse. So, who we hear from, very important. Because you advance in Krishna consciousness according to the level of association that you keep, that you attain. Right? If you associate with advanced devotees, you will become an advanced devotee. So you have to find, and that's why we're fortunate, because now we can just go onto YouTube or one of the other channels, and there's so many advanced devotees, and we can directly associate with them, easily. I was listening to Radhanath Swami and Malachi Mataji in the last couple of days, and it's very powerful. Sangha, very powerful association, which lifts us up. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a materialistic person can give up his material hankerings only by becoming situated in Krishna consciousness. Unless one finds a superior engagement, he will not be able to give up his inferior engagement. In the material world, everyone is engaged in the illusory activities of the inferior energy. But when one is given the opportunity to relish the activities of the superior energy performed by Krishna, then he forgets all his lesser pleasures. When Krishna speaks on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, to the materialistic person, it appears that this is simply talk between two friends. But actually, it is a river of nectar flowing from the mouth of Sri Krishna. Arjuna gave oral reception to such vibrations, and thus he became freed from all the illusions of material problems. Prabhupada explains this. In the 70s in Los Angeles, a group of devotees, after the morning program, they would go into the temple room and they would read about Krishna's pastimes, particularly with the gopis, from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And these devotees were called the Gopi Bhav Club. They may have even called it that themselves. Gopi Bhav Club. Now, when Prabhupada heard that they were doing this, Prabhupada stopped it. He said, because you are going prematurely to Krishna's intimate pastimes. And Prabhupada explained there is no difference from hearing Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita to hearing Krishna's pastimes with the gopis in the 10th canto. Right? Both are transcendental, both have an equal spiritual status. So if you're just hearing or you say, I have no taste for any other type of katha, Prabhupada said that is not Krishna consciousness. Because a advanced devotee like Prabhupada himself would relish hearing any of Krishna's pastimes or any of Krishna's words, right? It was not that he had to just hear one section or one type of pastime, but he was interested in hearing everything. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, he would hear from Gadadhar Pandit the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj from the 4th canto and Prahlad Maharaj from the 7th canto continuously. And that's Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who was situated on the platform of relishing Gopi Bhav or Radha Bhav, the most exalted type of consciousness. But he did not only hear about those things. He did hear about those things, but not only. So this shows us that we should be broad in our hearing of Krishna consciousness. That's why we study the Nectar of Devotion. Next, we'll study the Bhagavad Gita, and we studied Ishopanishad, and we studied Nectar of Instruction. We don't just sit here reading about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. We don't just read those sections although they're very relishable, but we need to be holistic in our hearing of the philosophy and the pastimes of Krishna. So then the final type of hearing is called Gunadi Shravana, which means to hear about the qualities of Krishna. So this is a quote from the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, verse 15. It is stated, a person who desires unalloyed devotional service to Lord Krishna, who is praised by transcendental sound vibrations, should always hear about his glorification and transcendental qualities. This will surely kill all kinds of inauspiciousness in the heart. So, to hear about Krishna's qualities, right, destroys inauspiciousness in the heart. Right? That's why we need to hear on a regular basis. Otherwise, what's the alternative? Right? We just hear about material subject matters, and it's Prabhupada would say hackneyed and boring. Prahlad Maharaj says, chewing the chewed. It's the same old thing. That's the interesting thing about this material world. We haven't fully realized it ourselves, but when you observe the material, everyone just does the same thing again and again and again. But everyone thinks they're unique. Oh, I'm doing it now. Or as Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way. But it's the same old thing, Frank. Everything you did or are doing, it's the same as what everyone else did and is doing. Right? There's nothing unique about it, but everyone thinks, oh no, I'm doing it now. Hackneyed and boring. It's the same old thing, chewing the chewed. Whereas Krishna's pastimes, Prabhupada explains, they are ever fresh. Right? They always have fresh rasa, fresh taste can be experienced when we hear about Krishna's pastimes. Even if we hear the same pastime again and again. But then when you hear it, you get fresh realization. Right? It is fresh in its in our appreciation of it. It always feels fresh. Right? So that's the difference between material pastimes and spiritual pastimes. So the next item of bhakti discussed in this chapter is also a very important item. It is called expecting the Lord's mercy, tat prepekshanam. Much of our life in this world is spent suffering the results of sinful reaction. Devotional service is so practical that it can transform our suffering into an opportunity to perform sadhana bhakti. It only requires the right attitude. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes Bhagavatam 10:14-8. This is a very well-known verse to show that there are two ways to practice Krishna consciousness in adverse situations. Number one, by accepting the reactions we suffer as the Lord's mercy, and two, by repeatedly offering obeisances to Krishna within the mind. So, this verse will be quoted to explain this particular item of bhakti, which is expecting the Lord's mercy. A devotee, Prabhupada actually says this verse, which we're about to read, Prabhupada says, this statement of Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-8. What is the 14th chapter of the Bhagavatam? Yeah, 10th canto. 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 8. What's the 14th chapter? It's Brahma's prayers. Yeah. Chapter 13 is Brahma Vimohan Leela. Brahma gets bewildered. And then he realized he made a big mistake. Sometimes you make big mistakes, right? And then when you realize it, you feel bewildered, as Brahma did, but you feel shrunken in your consciousness. Yeah, deflated. You know, you come down to your natural constitutional position. You know, so Lord Brahma made a big mistake, right? So after his big mistake, then he came to Krishna in the 14th chapter. He finds Krishna in a isolated place in the forest, and he offers prayers to Krishna. So it's a very important chapter, well-known chapter, and very important chapter. And this particular verse is maybe the most important verse, or it's definitely one of the most famous verses of Brahma's prayers. And Prabhupada says, and this is significant, about this particular verse, which we'll read in a minute, Prabhupada says, this verse should be the guide for all devotees. That's a powerful statement, right? This verse should be the guide for all devotees, right? And the verse is made up of two parts, basically. The first is to accept the reactions we suffer as the Lord's mercy. So when something bad happens to you in your life, does something bad ever happen to you in your life? Okay, so some people are liberated. They do not get bad things. But those mortal souls, some of us in this material world, we go through negative things. All of us do. Even Prabhupada. I mean, Prabhupada didn't have any karma. And the Pandavas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points this out, that pure devotees don't have karma, but they still go through difficulties in this world. Why? Because they show us how to handle the difficulties, not to forget Krishna. Because quite often when there's difficulties, what do? We forget Krishna. We take shelter of other things besides Krishna. Oh, my family will save me. Or my friends will save me. Or Ajamil thought, oh, my 3-year-old son will save me. Or my dog will save me. Or, whatever. We take shelter of so many other things besides Krishna. But when we are Krishna conscious, when we go through difficult things, we suffer in this world, we see that suffering as the mercy of Krishna. because we see it as Krishna. It's our karma, but Krishna is working through our karma to make us detached from this world. So Krishna is helping us to become detached and helping us to remember him. So when a devotee becomes more advanced, he thinks these reactions are Krishna's mercy. And, we have the example of Queen Kunti, who even says, I appreciate the difficulties. I appreciate it because it helps me to remember Krishna more. So that's a very advanced level of Krishna consciousness. So the second element of this verse is by repeatedly offering obeisances to Krishna within the mind, right? So even when the difficult things are happening in our mind, we don't blame Krishna. That's also a conditional occurrence or tendency of the conditioned soul. When something negative happens, we blame God. Krishna, why are you doing this to me? Krishna, why are you making this happen? Krishna. Sometimes people even become atheists. They reject God, reject Krishna when negative things happen. Prabhupada explains, Srila Prabhupada lived through 2 world wars. We can't imagine what that's like, living through 2, or even living through 1. And there's another one coming. Whether or not we'll live through it or not, I don't know, but there's another one coming. So Prabhupada lived through 2 world wars, and he said, when the wives and the mothers and the sisters of the German soldiers, when they found out they had lost their son or their husband or their brother, he said, many of them became atheists. It happens. Like sometimes that happens. We reject God. Something negative happens to us, we think, oh, God has done this to me. Or sometimes when bad things happen, we blame Krishna. Why didn't you protect this person? Maybe Krishna didn't want to protect that person. Maybe he had a different desire for that person. Krishna says, declare it boldly, my devotee will never perish. He says that in the Bhagavad Gita. But he never says that about the material body. Right? The devotee will never perish. He will always look after the devotee, but not the body. Body, yeah, maybe he will. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll save our body. Maybe we're in a car accident or something. Krishna saves our body. If he wants, he can do that. But he doesn't guarantee that. He says, I will save the bhakti or the devotional service or the momentum of the devotee. He will save that. He will save the devotee's spiritual advancement. He'll protect the soul. He'll give another opportunity for devotional service. He never says he'll protect the body. Whenever we go through difficulties in our heart and our mind, we have to continue to offer obeisances to Krishna. That's the test. Prabhupada said, that's why Prabhupada says, this should be the guide for all devotees. That's a powerful statement. Prabhupada's saying that about this verse. That shows that, and I've heard some devotees speak on this verse over the years, and they've said this is the most important verse in our tradition, in our philosophy. Because if you can master the teachings in this verse, you will become fully Krishna conscious. It's a very powerful teaching. So, what is the verse? In the 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 8, it is said, my dear Lord, any person who constantly is awaiting your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him, and who goes on suffering the resultant actions of his past misdeeds, offering you respectful obeisances from the core of his heart, is surely eligible to become liberated, for it has become his rightful claim. It's a very powerful verse. Lord Brahma speaking to Krishna. Prabhupada says, this statement of the Bhagavatam is the guide for all devotees. A devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reactions of his past misdeeds. At the end of the paragraph, Prabhupada says, in a similar way, a pure devotee who is prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations in executing Krishna conscious duties becomes lawfully qualified to enter into the transcendental abode. The Sanskrit is daya bhak. Daya bhak means it becomes your rightful inheritance, just like, you may be left an inheritance from your parents, as an example. So they leave you an inheritance. So this may be challenged. Sometimes, your fortune, what's being left to you, is challenged. Someone says, no, it's not yours, it's mine, or it's someone else's. But if it's your rightful inheritance, you will get it. You will receive it. It'll be taken to court and they'll say, no, it belongs to them. They will get it. So what's being said here, the devotee is daya bhak, which means they will get the kingdom of God. That will be their rightful inheritance. If you can just master this verse, right? You just expect Krishna's mercy. Whatever you go through, whatever difficulty we face, we just keep remembering Krishna. We keep offering obeisances to him within our heart. We don't blame him. We don't criticize him. We don't blaspheme him. We just say, Krishna, I deserve worse. You are my Lord. These are just my past misdeeds, the reactions. Please accept my service. If you continue to do that your whole life, you will enter into the kingdom of God that has become your rightful inheritance. Right? So it's a very powerful verse. So expecting the Lord's mercy. It's an item of bhakti. Right? You expect Krishna's mercy. Krishna will look after us. Right? We have to learn that mentality. Krishna will look after us. Our faith is tested all the time. Our faith is tested all the time. But we have to get to the point where we understand, no, Krishna will take care of us. Krishna will look after us. If we have that mentality, then everything will be auspicious in our lives. So the next two items, or the next item, we'll go first, is remembrance. So this is called smriti. There are these two items are similar. The first item is called remembrance. The second one is called meditation. In Sanskrit, remembrance is called smriti, and meditation is called jnanam. Yeah, jnanam. 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means meditation. And Krishna, in 6th chapter, he speaks about meditation. You go and sit on the deer skin and look at the tip of your nose and like that. So he talks about jnana yoga. So these two items are very similar. Remembrance means to think of Krishna in a general way. Meditation involves deeper contemplation, which Rupa Goswami has divided into 4 types: Rupa Jnanam, Guna Jnanam, Krida Jnanam, and Seva Jnanam. So the first is called Rupa Jnanam. We'll discuss this when we get to meditation. So remembrance, smriti or smarana, right? Remembrance. Some way or other, if someone establishes in his mind a continuous relationship with Krishna, this relationship is called remembrance. This remembrance, sorry, I must have used it. About this remembrance, there is a nice statement in the Vishnu Purana where it is said, simply by remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities become eligible for all kinds of auspiciousness. Therefore, let me always remember the Lord who is inborn and eternal. In the Padma Purana, the same remembrance is explained as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, because if someone remembers him, either at the time of death or during his lifespan, he becomes freed from all sinful reactions. So this is called smriti or smaranam, remembrance, which is the goal of Krishna consciousness. So this has to be achieved either this has to be achieved either during this life or at the time of death. That's what sadhana means. Sadhana means practice. So we do sadhana, or we practice devotional service, sadhana bhakti, so that at the time of death, we will be disciplined and prepared and practiced in thinking about Krishna, remembering Krishna, because that's the moment that counts. You have to remember Krishna at the time of death. And if you're not practiced in that's why we chant our rounds. It's why we do devotional service. That's why we study Prabhupada's books, so that we're practiced in remembering Krishna, so at the time of death we can remember him. It doesn't happen automatically. Sometimes people think, oh, I'll just remember Krishna at the time of death. It's not that easy. Your mind will go on many things at the time of death. So you have to practice remembering Krishna. He has to become. I heard His Holiness Satchinandan Swami, who's one of my Shiksha gurus. I heard him say a few years ago that at the end of your life, if you just say to Krishna, Krishna, I am yours, you'll go back to him. That's enough. So I hope I say that. I hope I just say, Krishna, I am yours. And then you will go back to him. Even I was listening, like driving up and back from Melbourne the last couple of days, I was listening to Prabhupada's daughters, his female disciples, speaking about him. Very powerful. I heard a number of things I'd never heard before. And one of it might have been Kusha. I can't remember if it was her or it was one of the other devotees, but Onanga Manjari was one of them, one of Prabhupada's disciples. And she was saying that her mother was inimical. Never liked her. She joined the movement when she was 16. So, her mother didn't like it. Whole life did not like it. But then she was with her at the time of death. And then wait a minute. She passed away while Prabhupada was on the planet, not long after she joined. There was another devotee who her mother lived and passed away more recently, but she passed away while Prabhupada was on the planet. And she said to her daughter, just as she's passing away, she said, where is your Krishna now? And then she left her body. So they told Prabhupada. She said, the last thing she said, where is your Krishna? And Prabhupada said, she went back to Godhead. Prabhupada said that. And Prabhupada said she went back to Godhead, because she thought at the last moment, where is your Krishna now? And then the other Mataji, she was explaining about her mother passing away, which was more recently, many years after Prabhupada left. And she was the same. She was inimical her whole life, but at the end, and she was making the point that just keep presenting Krishna to everyone, your family and everyone. Because at the end, she actually said to her daughter in her final moment, she said, will Krishna come and get me? Her whole life she'd been inimical to Krishna. But at the end she said, will Krishna? So it was there. Purification had taken place. She said, will, and then left. And Prabhupada said, because they remember Krishna at that last moment then. And because they're connected to devotees, then they're taken. So this is called smriti or remembrance. So we have to practice remembering Krishna. Otherwise, you might think of something else at the time of death. It's precarious. And the last item of bhakti is called meditation, which in Sanskrit is called dhyana. The last item in this chapter. So Rupa Goswami, he divides this contemplation or meditation, this jhanam, into 4 types. First is Rupa Jhanam, meditation on Krishna's form, which we were speaking about before. You meditate on Krishna's form. And you have to study and hear about Krishna's form. What color is Krishna's hair? Yeah, good. Yeah, blackish with a blue tinge, or sometimes it says with a red tinge. And I've seen both. Indian people always have black hair, and you see sometimes you're in Vrindavan, sun shining, you look at something, you see like a blue tinge coming off their hair, and sometimes you see a red tinge coming. So the blue or the red, like that. But Krishna's, and we can discuss many details about Krishna's hair. We don't have time now, but we have to learn about his features so we can meditate on his form. Right? Number 2, Guna Jnana, meditating on Krishna's qualities. As we said, there are 64 qualities. You have to remember at least some of them. Some devotees memorize the 64. Remember a few years ago, Mukhi memorized? Yeah, I think he got to like 40 something. Yeah, he memorized like that. So I hope he hasn't forgotten them. That's the process. The process means we have to learn to remember these details about Krishna. One of the qualities of Krishna, he can speak in the language of any species. He can speak to the birds, he can speak to the animals, speak to the trees, he can speak to anyone. This is one of his qualities. There's so many qualities. We have to remember these things. Meditate on them. Number 3, Krida Dhyana, meditation on Krishna's activities. Krida means activity, force, like doing something. What does Krishna do? What does Krishna do? Like he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't actually sleep, but when he wakes up in bed, Mother Yashoda comes in and feeds him in bed before he even gets up. What's the first thing he eats in the morning? Sweet. Yeah, it's what do you call it? Rubbery.
Rubber.
It's like condensed milk. Yeah, they cook it down, cook it and cook it and cook it. It becomes like thick, sweet. And then that's what he gets. Gets a little bit of that. And then Balaram's sitting there and Madhu Mangal's sitting on the other side. Mother Yashoda, she gives all 3 of them, and they haven't even got out of bed yet, wash their mouths. They're taking rubbery. And Madhu Mangal says, is there any more? And he's ready to go first thing in the morning. And she gives a bit more. He says, is there any more? He gets like really enthusiastic. Intoxicated. Yeah. Everyone in the spiritual world is intoxicated, but on spiritual bliss. But he gets first thing in the morning. So this is Krishna's activities. So we have to know all about his activities. Go on and on and on. So many activities. We have to learn about them, meditate on them. And the 4th type of jhanam is seva jhanam, meditating on devotional service to Krishna. So even we're meditating on our service, that is purifying. We can meditate on service in terms of our perfected service in our Siddha Deha. We can begin to meditate on those kind of services while we're chanting. Making tambula for Krishna or fanning him with the chamara or something like that. You can meditate on those services. Or we can even meditate on the services in this world, like distributing books or cooking a feast or milking a cow or all the services we do for Krishna. Right? All of this is seva dhyanam. It's meditation. Okay, so Natalie was asking, what is the open book topic for the Nectar of Devotion? So the open book topic will be same as for the Ishopanishad and the Nectar of Instruction. It will be an overview of the 19 chapters, an overview of how they connect and correlate. That may sound very involved, but if it's actually no more complicated than the other two essays of that. But you'll just have to bring those 19 chapters together in an overview. That will be the subject matter. So, any questions, any comments about what we discussed? Thank you all for coming. I'll see you next week.
I have
Hare
a
Krishna.
question. My hand's been up for ages.
Oh, sorry.
Pull the blood straight from it.
Sorry. It's just because I'm on my phone, not the computer, so I can't see anyone's face.
Okay. I'm back in the hearing.
Yep.
You said there's Nama Shravana, which is the name, Charita Shravana, and Unadi Shravana. What is Charita Shravana?
Charita Shravana, I believe, is
And what is Unadi Shravana?
yep. So Charita Shravana is hearing about his pastimes.
Pastimes.
Charita
Yeah.
Shravana is hearing about his pastime. Nama Shravana is hearing about his name.
Yeah.
And Gunadi Shravana is hearing about his qualities.
I didn't know it was a G at the front. I thought you said Unadi.
Yeah,
Oh,
Gunadi.
Unadi makes sense. Qualities. Yeah.
Yeah, Gunadi. Hearing about his qualities.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We'll see you next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. See you on Sunday. If you